The world is changing. For decades, the United States has been the dominant global superpower, but the 21st century is witnessing a shift in the balance of power. Emerging economies are challenging the established order, and nowhere is this more evident than in the rise of BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These 5 nations, with their vast populations, resources, and economies, are forging a new path, independent of the traditional Western-led institutions. This shift is not without its challenges. The United States, accustomed to its role as the world's sole superpower, is grappling with the implications of a multipolar world. Tensions are rising, economic competition is intensifying, and the specter of a new Cold War looms large. From trade disputes to geopolitical rivalries, the fault lines between the US and BRICS are becoming increasingly apparent. This emerging rivalry is not merely a struggle for economic or military dominance. It represents a fundamental clash of ideologies and visions for the future. The United States, with its emphasis on liberal democracy and free markets, faces a growing challenge from BRICS, which advocates for a more multipolar world order and a greater voice for developing nations. This clash of visions is playing out on the global stage, shaping everything from international trade to climate change negotiations. The stakes are high, and the outcome of this geopolitical chess match will have profound consequences for the future of our world. Will the rise of BRICS lead to a new Cold War characterized by mistrust, confrontation, and the threat of conflict? Or can these emerging powers coexist peacefully with the established order, forging a new era of cooperation and shared prosperity? The answers to these questions lie in understanding the motivations, strategies, and challenges facing both sides of this emerging global divide. The BRICS nations, though geographically diverse and politically distinct, are united by a common desire to reshape the global order and secure their rightful place on the world stage. They are no longer content with being rule takers in a system designed by and for the benefit of developed nations. Instead, they are determined to be rule makers, shaping the institutions and norms that will govern the 21st century. This ambition is fueled by their remarkable economic rise. Over the past 2 decades, the BRICS economies have grown at an unprecedented rate, lifting millions out of poverty and transforming their societies. China, in particular, has emerged as a global economic powerhouse, challenging the United States for economic supremacy. This economic clout is translating into political influence, as the BRICS nations increasingly assert themselves in international affairs. The BRICS nations are also forging their own institutions, independent of the traditional Western-led bodies like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The new development bank, established by BRICS in 2014, provides an alternative source of financing for infrastructure and development projects in emerging economies. This move is seen as a direct challenge to the dominance of the US dollar and the existing global financial architecture. This shift in power is not limited to the economic realm. BRICS nations are also strengthening their military capabilities and forging strategic alliances to safeguard their interests. From Russia's military modernization to India's growing naval power, these nations are determined to defend their sovereignty and pursue their geopolitical objectives. This assertive posture has raised concerns in the West, fueling fears of a more unstable and unpredictable world order. The question on everyone's mind is whether the rise of BRICS will inevitably lead to a new Cold War. Some analysts point to the growing economic rivalry, geopolitical tensions, and ideological differences as evidence that a new era of confrontation is unavoidable. They argue that the zero-sum mentality of great power competition will inevitably lead to conflict. Others, however, believe that a new Cold War is not a foregone conclusion. They argue that the world has changed dramatically since the last century. Globalization has created complex interdependencies, making large-scale conflict more costly and less likely. Moreover, the BRICS nations themselves are not a monolithic bloc. They have their own internal divisions and competing interests, which could prevent them from forming a united front against the West. The future, therefore, remains uncertain. The relationship between the US and BRICS will likely be characterized by both cooperation and competition. On issues like climate change and global pandemics, cooperation will be essential. However, on matters of trade, technology, and geopolitics, rivalry and tension are likely to persist. The challenge for both sides is to manage this complex relationship responsibly, avoiding the traps of zero-sum thinking and finding ways to coexist peacefully in an increasingly multipolar world. The alternative, a new Cold War, would be disastrous for everyone, leading to global instability, economic disruption, and the potential for conflict. The world is watching, waiting to see if the major powers can rise to the challenge and forge a new path for the 21st century. Brazil, the economic powerhouse of South America, finds itself at a crossroads in the emerging global order. Long reliant on its relationship with the United States, Brazil is increasingly charting an independent course, seeking to diversify its partnerships and assert its leadership within the global South. This balancing act is driven by a desire to maximize Brazil's economic potential while safeguarding its sovereignty in a world increasingly defined by great power competition. Under President Lula da Silva, Brazil has renewed its commitment to BRICS, seeing the group as a platform to amplify its voice on the world stage and advocate for the interests of developing nations. This renewed engagement is evident in Brazil's active participation in BRICS initiatives, including the New Development Bank, which is seen as a viable alternative to Western-dominated financial institutions. However, Brazil's balancing act is not without its challenges. The United States remains a crucial trading partner, and Brazil must carefully navigate its relationships to avoid becoming entangled in the escalating rivalry between Washington and Beijing. This delicate dance was evident in Brazil's recent decision to join China's Belt and Road Initiative, a move that was met with cautious skepticism in Washington. Despite the challenges, Brazil seems determined to forge its own path, leveraging its economic weight and diplomatic skills to carve out a space for itself in the emerging multipolar world. Whether Brazil can successfully navigate these complex geopolitical currents and emerge as a truly independent global player remains to be seen. One thing is certain: Brazil's choices will have significant implications for the future of South America and the global South as a whole. Russia, facing increasing isolation from the West, has embarked on a strategic pivot towards the East, seeking new partnerships and markets to reduce its dependence on the United States and its allies. This pivot is driven by both economic necessity and geopolitical ambition, as Russia seeks to reassert its influence on the world stage and challenge the perceived dominance of the West. Central to Russia's pivot east is its burgeoning relationship with China. The two countries have found common ground in their shared desire for a more multipolar world order and their opposition to what they perceive as Western hegemony. This strategic alignment has manifested in closer economic ties, including a landmark gas deal and increased trade using their own currencies, bypassing the US dollar. Beyond China, Russia has also deepened its ties with other BRICS nations, seeing the group as a platform to coordinate its foreign policy objectives and promote its vision of a more equitable world order. This engagement is evident in Russia's active participation in BRICS summits and its support for the group's initiatives, such as the New Development Bank. Russia's pivot east is a long-term strategic gamble, and its success is far from guaranteed. The country faces significant economic challenges, and its dependence on China carries its own risks. However, Russia seems determined to break free from what it sees as Western containment and forge its own destiny in a rapidly changing world. This assertive posture has profound implications for the global balance of power, particularly in regions like Eastern Europe and the Arctic, where Russia's interests increasingly intersect with those of the West. The growing assertiveness of Brazil and Russia, alongside their fellow BRICS members, signals a potential turning point in the global order. For decades, the global South, encompassing Latin America, Africa, and much of Asia, has often found itself relegated to the sidelines of international affairs, its voice muted, its interests overlooked. However, the rise of BRICS, coupled with the shifting geopolitical landscape, offers a glimmer of hope for a more equitable and just world order. BRICS represents a challenge to the traditional North-South divide, a legacy of colonialism and inequality that continues to shape global power dynamics. By forging their own path, independent of Western-dominated institutions, BRICS nations are not only seeking to advance their own interests, but also to create a more level playing field for developing countries around the world. This challenge to the established order is not without its risks. The potential for a new Cold War, this time between the West and the global South, is a sobering reminder of the stakes involved. However, the potential rewards of a more just and equitable world order are too great to ignore. The world is watching, waiting to see if this burgeoning movement towards a multipolar world will usher in an era of cooperation and shared prosperity, or descend into a new era of confrontation and division. The choices made by the leaders of both the global North and the global South will determine the course of history for generations to come. Will they rise to the challenge and build a more just and sustainable future for all? The answer to that question remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: the world will never be the same. India, with its vast population and burgeoning economy, is rapidly emerging as a key player on the global stage. No longer content to be seen as simply a regional power, India is asserting its influence in everything from technology to space exploration, challenging traditional power structures and forging its own path in the 21st century. This newfound assertiveness is driven by a potent combination of economic dynamism, technological prowess, and a growing sense of national pride. One of the most striking aspects of India's rise is its dominance in the technology sector. Indian tech companies, once seen as mere outsourcers to Silicon Valley giants, are now global players in their own right, developing cutting-edge software, artificial intelligence, and digital platforms that are transforming industries and shaping the future of technology. This technological prowess is not only driving economic growth, but also enhancing India's strategic leverage in a world increasingly defined by data and digital innovation. Beyond technology, India's economic rise is evident in its rapidly growing middle class, its expanding manufacturing sector, and its increasing global trade footprint. India is no longer content to be a passive player in the global economy. It is actively seeking new markets, forging strategic partnerships, and attracting foreign investment to fuel its ambitious development goals. This economic dynamism is transforming India's domestic landscape, lifting millions out of poverty, and creating a new generation of confident, aspirational citizens eager to make their mark on the world. India's growing influence extends far beyond the economic realm. The country is playing an increasingly assertive role in international affairs, championing the interests of developing nations and advocating for a more multipolar world order. From climate change negotiations to global security initiatives, India is making its voice heard, challenging traditional power structures and demanding a seat at the table where global decisions are made. This assertive posture is not about seeking confrontation, but rather about ensuring that India's voice and the voices of other rising powers are heard and respected in a rapidly changing world. Section 2. China's Global Ambitions, the Belt and Road Initiative, and beyond. China's rise has been remarkable, transforming into a global powerhouse. The Belt and Road Initiative is a massive infrastructure project, reshaping global trade routes and expanding China's influence. It challenges traditional geopolitical alignments. Beyond this, China is modernizing its military, raising global concerns. Section 3. BRICS and the New Global South, a collective force for change. The rise of India and China, alongside Brazil, Russia, and South Africa, signals a potential turning point in the global order. For decades, the Global South has often found itself sidelined in international affairs. However, the emergence of BRICS offers hope for a more just and balanced global system. BRICS challenges the traditional North-South divide, a legacy of colonialism and inequality. By forging their own path, BRICS nations seek to create a more level playing field for developing countries. This challenge is about ensuring that the voices of the Global South are heard and respected. The BRICS nations desire a more multipolar world order, where power is more evenly distributed. They advocate for a more inclusive and equitable system. The rise of BRICS is not without challenges, including internal divisions and great power rivalries. The choices made by leaders will determine the course of history for generations to come. Section 1. South Africa, a bridge between continents. South Africa occupies a unique and important position in the evolving global order. As the only African nation within BRICS, it serves as a crucial bridge between Asia and Africa. This role positions South Africa as a key player in the power shift towards a more multipolar world. South Africa's history is linked to the struggle against colonialism and apartheid. This shared history fosters solidarity and a commitment to multilateralism in its foreign policy. Geographically, South Africa is strategically located at the crossroads of major shipping lanes. Its well-developed infrastructure makes it a gateway to the African continent. Within BRICS, South Africa amplifies the concerns and aspirations of the African continent. It advocates for greater representation of developing nations in global institutions. Section 2. Challenging the Western narrative. South Africa's independent foreign policy. South Africa's foreign policy is characterized by a commitment to non-alignment. This means it is not beholden to any one power or bloc of nations. This stance has sometimes put South Africa at odds with its Western partners. South Africa has been critical of Western double standards in international affairs. It has spoken out against Western military interventions in countries like Libya and Syria. South Africa believes the Global South should have a greater say in shaping the global order. This stance resonates with many countries across the Global South. South Africa's independent foreign policy has earned it respect and admiration. It is a testament to its commitment to a more just and equitable world order. Section 3. BRICS expansion and the future of the Global South. BRICS has evolved into a substantial geopolitical force, challenging Western dominance. The group's growing influence is evident in its expanding membership. This expansion reflects shifting global power dynamics. The rise of BRICS represents a challenge to the existing global order. The future of BRICS depends on overcoming internal divisions and addressing concerns of developing nations. If successful, BRICS can reshape the global landscape. The expansion of BRICS indicates a move towards a more multipolar system. This shift presents both opportunities and challenges for the Global South. The choices made by leaders will determine whether this new era leads to cooperation or conflict. Section 1. Caught in the crossfire. Canada's balancing act between the US and BRICS. Canada finds itself in a delicate balancing act as the rivalry between the US and BRICS intensifies. Canada's economy is deeply integrated with the United States. However, Canada recognizes the growing influence of BRICS nations, particularly China. This balancing act has become increasingly challenging in recent years. Canada has been pressured by the US to take a harder line against China. One example is Canada's approach to the issue of Huawei. The US has pressured Canada to ban Huawei from its 5G networks. However, Canada has been reluctant to follow suit, citing the need for further investigation. Canada's balancing act is further complicated by domestic political considerations. Mexico, like Canada, is grappling with the challenges of maintaining close ties with the United States while pursuing its own interests. The USMCA trade agreement has further integrated the Mexican economy with that of the United States. The rise of BRICS, particularly China, has presented Mexico with both opportunities and challenges. China's growing appetite for raw materials has created new markets for Mexican exports. However, China's competitive advantage in manufacturing has posed challenges for some sectors of the Mexican economy. Mexico has sought to leverage its relationship with China to diversify its trade partnerships. This strategy has been met with mixed results. Mexico's relationship with the United States remains paramount. The growing rivalry between the US and BRICS has created both opportunities and challenges for Mexico. Mexico's success will depend on its ability to leverage its economic potential and pursue a foreign policy that serves its long-term interests. The rise of BRICS has profound implications for regional integration efforts around the world. Regional integration initiatives have often been shaped by the geopolitical interests of the United States. However, the emergence of BRICS has created new opportunities for regional integration initiatives. BRICS nations have been actively promoting regional integration within their respective spheres of influence. China, through its Belt and Road Initiative, is promoting economic integration across Asia, Africa, and Europe. India has been strengthening its ties with its South Asian neighbors. Russia has been a driving force behind the Eurasian Economic Union. This push for regional integration is driven by a desire to create alternative economic and political structures. The success of these BRICS-led regional integration initiatives remains to be seen. However, the growing influence of BRICS suggests that these initiatives will play an increasingly important role in shaping the global landscape. Donald Trump's presidency marked a shift in American foreign policy, characterized by economic nationalism and a confrontational approach towards China. This alienated allies and emboldened rivals. For BRICS nations, it accelerated efforts for a more independent path. Trump's policies may have inadvertently accelerated the shift towards a multipolar world. Elon Musk, the enigmatic CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, embodies the complexities of the technological competition between the United States and China. Musk's ventures in China have raised concerns in Washington about technology transfer and national security. His decision to build a Tesla gigafactory in Shanghai was a major coup for China. The gigafactory's success has made Tesla the leading electric vehicle brand in China. However, it has also raised concerns about the transfer of sensitive technology. Whether Musk is a disruptor or a pawn in this tech Cold War remains to be seen. The rivalry between the United States and BRICS extends to social media, a key battleground for shaping global narratives. Social media disrupts traditional media, offering BRICS nations a platform to challenge Western perspectives. The outcome will shape global perceptions and values. Section 4. The Perils of Polarization, Navigating the Risks of a Divided World. As the rivalry between the US and BRICS intensifies, there is a growing risk of polarization, of a world divided into competing blocs with divergent interests and ideologies. This polarization, fueled by mistrust, misinformation, and a lack of dialogue, could have dangerous consequences for global peace and security, undermining cooperation on shared challenges like climate change, pandemics, and nuclear proliferation. One manifestation of this polarization is the increasing use of sanctions and other forms of economic coercion as tools of foreign policy. The US in particular has increasingly relied on sanctions to punish countries that challenge its interests, often with devastating consequences for civilian populations. This trend towards economic warfare, while intended to pressure rivals into submission, often backfires, strengthening their resolve and pushing them closer to other adversaries. Another danger of polarization is the potential for miscalculation and escalation, particularly in regional hotspots where the interests of the US and BRICS intersect. The South China Sea, Taiwan Strait, and Eastern Europe are all potential flashpoints where misunderstandings or miscalculations could lead to dangerous escalations. Navigating the perils of polarization requires a commitment to dialogue, diplomacy, and a recognition of shared interests. While the US and BRICS may have different visions for the future of the global order, they also face common challenges that require cooperation. Climate change, pandemics, terrorism, and nuclear proliferation are all transnational threats that cannot be addressed by any one country or bloc of countries alone. Section 5. Towards a multipolar future. Can BRICS and the US coexist? The rise of BRICS and the relative decline of US hegemony signal a shift towards a more multipolar world. Can BRICS and the US coexist peacefully, or will their rivalry lead to conflict? The future depends on their willingness to embrace dialogue and diplomacy. The world is watching, waiting to see if cooperation and shared prosperity are possible. Embracing a multipolar world. The world is transitioning from a unipolar order to a multipolar system. Emerging economies like BRICS play an influential role, presenting opportunities for a more just and equitable world order. The rise of BRICS shows the dynamism of the developing world, lifting millions out of poverty and investing in education and infrastructure. They advocate for multilateralism, respect for national sovereignty, and a more equitable global system. Section 2. BRICS and the Future. Towards a more just and equitable global order. The future of the international order and the role that BRICS will play in shaping it remains uncertain. The BRICS nations have a unique opportunity to shape a more just and equitable global order, one that reflects the aspirations of the global South and addresses the challenges facing humanity in the 21st century. Will they prioritize cooperation and dialogue, or will they resort to confrontation and conflict? The answer ultimately lies in the choices we make today.